fellow human beings, PowerGamer here. Like all depressed 20-somethings, I decided I wanted to relive the days of my youth, and the best way to do that is by playing my DSi in the one place I played it more than any place else, in the backseat of a car on a long trip. And when it comes to games that I primarily played in the backseat of a car on a long trip, Mario Kart DS is one of the prime examples that comes to mind, not only because it's about driving, so it fits with the theming, but also because this was the main place I actually got to play it.
Mario Kart DS. Driving is back in the palm of your hand. The fifth game in the Mario Kart series and the second portable entry, though this game has the distinction of being a real Mario Kart game, something Super Circuit can't really say. Not that that was a bad game, it did the job for what it was supposed to be, but that's the thing, it really was just supposed to be a portable Mario Kart game and not much else. Mario Kart DS was meant to be the next major entry in the series that really pushed Mario Kart forward. Obviously there were some limitations due to it being a handheld entry, but this game still introduced a lot of elements that the following games in the series would either keep or expand on. The game was announced on May 11, 2004, only a few months after the DS itself was first unveiled. It was directed by Makoto Wada and Yasuyuki Oyagi, and produced by a longtime veteran of the series, Hideki Kono. It was made playable to the public at the 2005 Game Developers Conference, which primarily showed off the game's new wireless features. Since the game was being developed for the DS, the developers experimented with several new features, many of which involved the system's touchscreen. One of which was the ability to place items anywhere on the track, but that was scrapped since they thought it would be too confusing. Though it did make it in was the ability to play against other players online, which was becoming a staple at the time thanks to stuff like Halo and Call of Duty, albeit with a much different audience. Mario Kart DS was released on November 14th, 2005 in North America, with other countries getting it a few weeks later, and Japan was the last country to get it on December 8th, which I find pretty interesting. The game was a giant hit. It became the best-selling Mario Kart game at the time and the third best-selling DS game with over 23.6 million copies sold, which was largely due to a combination of the Mario Kart series being a well-established franchise at this point, and the DS would end up becoming Nintendo's most popular system until the Switch. Reception was also the highest the series had seen up to that point. Unlike Super Circuit and even Double Dash upon release, pretty much everyone agreed that DS was the definitive Mario Kart game at the time, which is pretty crazy when you remember that this was a handheld game back when those titles were fairly compromised for the sake of portability. And nowadays, it's generally considered one of the best of the series by people who grew up with it, and even people who didn't still say it's a great time.
Though something I find kind of funny is that I've noticed quite a few people say they missed out on this game when it first came out, with Wii being their childhood Mario Kart game, and DS often gets overlooked by a lot of people, at least in my generation or slightly older, which is weird because for me, it was the complete opposite. I never owned Wii, but DS was the first Mario Kart game that I properly played, even if it wasn't technically mine. As I've said before, when my brother and I first got our DSi's for Christmas in 2009, we each got one game to go along with it. Mine was Club Penguin Elite Penguin Force, while his was Mario Kart DS. So, while I technically didn't own it, I did borrow it from him every once in a while, and I had quite a bit of fun with it. Hell, we even got to play multiplayer together sometimes thanks to DS Download Play, though unfortunately I was never able to swipe it from him like I did with New Super Mario Bros., so I had to buy my own copy as an adult later on. So despite having a lot of fond memories of this game, I never really went through and actually did everything. Hell, there's probably plenty of courses that I never even touched. So, with the long open road ahead of me, I think it's time I finally see what lies inside this small piece of my childhood.
Well, the game sadly doesn't have much of an opening, but that doesn't matter since you actually set up a profile this time. This is mainly used for multiplayer. It asks for your name, which comes from your system, and you can draw an emblem that will appear on your cart. I'm not much of a nerd, so I decided to just write the Constitution, although I only had so much room. After that, we can easily hop into a race, where we quickly see our new character roster. We got the same base roster as Mario Kart 64 and Super Circuit: Mario, Luigi, Peach, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, Bowser, Toad, and Wario. Though there's 4 extra characters you can unlock by beating the different cups. Daisy and Waluigi come back from Double Dash, and there's a couple new additions. There's Dry Bones, who effectively replaces Koopa Troopa, but I'm okay with that since I find him way more interesting. I mean, a basic turtle? Lame. A skeleton turtle? Now we're talking. But that pales in comparison to the coolest new character, Rob the Robot. Yes, before Super Smash Bros. Brawl, this is where the Robotic Menace made his playable debut. And while he's not the first Mario Kart character to not appear in a Mario game, he was the first one to have no connection whatsoever, since Donkey Kong and Mario are very closely linked. So Rob is a random yet awesome addition. We have half the courses available to us, and jumping in, we have a Mario Kart game. Yep, it's the same formula from the other games, driving around the track and using items to get first place overall in 4 races to win the cup. Though this game does have a couple new features. In addition to the L button, you can hit the X button to use items, which is what I did when I was a kid, though I personally wouldn't recommend it now. And because we're on the DS, the bottom screen has a map. This is honestly really cool. You can switch between a more zoomed-in map showing you what's around you, or a bird's eye view showing you the whole track. Though I always go with the zoomed-in one, since it can give you a better idea of what's an obstacle and what isn't. Hell, if you want, you can try playing the whole game with just the bottom screen, which I'm sure at least some of you out there did when you were young. But my favorite thing about the bottom screen is that you can actually see what items the other racers have, which can be really helpful, especially if you're in first place and you see someone with a blue shell, since if the person in second is close to you, you can back up so they get caught in the explosion, or just let them take the hit for you outright, which is really satisfying to do. The one aspect of this game that's definitely worse than before is the graphics. This is the first Nintendo handheld capable of 3D, which means 2D Mario Kart has officially gone the way of the Birdo, and I can't say it'll be missed. It's really impressive that they were able to get something that actually feels and plays like a full Mario Kart game on the DS, though they had to cut corners somewhere, and that somewhere is the visuals. The character models are insanely jagged, and honestly look like something out of the N64, but thankfully there is some charm to how they look, so it in no way hinders the experience, especially since 99% of the tracks themselves look really solid. And the music is great. There's some forgettable tunes in here, but there's plenty of others that are iconic and catchy as hell, which makes their respective tracks that much more fun to play on.
Now, while Double Dash really shook up the Mario Kart formula, DS largely goes back to basics, which I assume was probably due to technical limitations.
We're back to only one character per kart, and the character-specific items have been removed, which means stuff like the gold mushroom and triple shells, which aren't juggled anymore, are back to being used by anybody, and the Bob-omb comes back as an all-inclusive item as well. It's a good thing the babies aren't in this game, or their daycare center will be gone in minutes. The main thing kept from Double Dash is the kart customization. By default, every character has two karts, a standard one and a personal one, but as you go through the game, you unlock more karts, and some of which that were character exclusive can be used by others. Which kart you pick has a much bigger effect on your stats than it did in Double Dash. It actually shows you everything in this game, which is really helpful when deciding which ones you want to pick. The controls are also a lot simpler. It's nowhere near as bouncy as Double Dash was, so it's a lot easier to get in the groove and figure out what you're supposed to do on these tracks. The drifting works similarly, aside from the fact that you can only get 2 boosts instead of 3, and while controlling with a D-pad isn't as fluid as with the joystick, the game still controls pretty well. Though I'm really not a fan of anything that's supposed to slow you down because they went way too overboard with it. Driving in mud or dirt is so slow that it makes you barely move at all, which wouldn't be as big of an issue if it wasn't for the tracks where you have to go over it. This game also established the starting boost, where you hold down the button right before the 2 goes away to get a speed boost before the race begins. Older games did have starting boosts, but they had some pretty different methods. Well, from here on out, they all work like this. But now let's take a look at those items, shall we? The item roster for this game is similar to Mario Kart 64, only with the previously mentioned Bob-ombs returning from Double Dash, and the multi-banana is back, though it only has 3 peels this time instead of 5. We got some more small changes, like the red shells can hit you from the side, so blocking doesn't always work, which is annoying. The fake item box blends in much easier with the real ones, but the bottom screen shows you if it's real or not, so it's still just an hazard you have to drive past and very little else. Plus the boo is back. Hooray! For brand new items, we've got 2, and they are the epitome of yin and yang, since they are easily the best and worst items in the entire Mario Kart series up to this point. The best being the Bullet Bill. It's basically a souped-up version of the Chain Chomp from Double Dash. You rocket forward automatically at full speed, and unlike the Chain Chomp, you are completely invincible when doing so. It's by far the rarest item, and mainly reserved for whoever's in last place, so you won't see it too often, but it can easily save some races. And the worst being the Blooper. All this thing does is fly up and shoot ink at everyone in front of you, which stays on the screen. So all it really does is block your vision, which can be slightly annoying and maybe cause you to hit something, but most of the time it's completely useless. In single player, it doesn't affect the computer in a noticeable way, and in multiplayer, they can just look at the bottom screen, so yeah, this thing sucks. And what makes it even worse is that it's usually only given towards racers in the middle, so it's aggravating whenever you get it. Plus the ink goes away if you use a mushroom or go over a speed boost, which makes it even more useless.
The item balance in Mario Kart DS is pretty straightforward, especially when you compare it to 64 and Double Dash, so what do you say we take a look at this game's courses?
The Mushroom Cup opens with Figure 8 Circuit, which might take the record for the most basic course in the entire Mario Kart series. It is literally just a figure 8 and nothing else. There is not a single hazard on the entire track, just a couple of turns. I mean, it is the first course, which is always a basic racetrack, but this one takes it to another level. When I was young, this was actually the track I played the most because I liked how simple it was. Yes, I was a wuss, but despite knowing this track isn't very good, it will always have a safe place in my heart. There's a reason I have a picture of it framed on my wall. Yoshi Falls, on the other hand, stinks. It's just a big circle with some waterfalls that you can fall off of, but why would you go on them anyway since they slow you down? Especially when not going on them has speed boost panels. Yeah, this track is lame, but thankfully things get better from here. Cheap Cheap Beach is a nice little beach level with some crabs and a few ramps. It's simple, but fun. And I know this track better than most of them because for whatever reason my brother would always pick it when we played multiplayer together. And finally, Luigi's Mansion. This is easily the best of the Mushroom Cup. It captures the spirit of the original game perfectly, even having portrait ghosts on the walls. There's this long hallway, which is really fun to drift through, and some cool parts with these haunted trees, though the outside area with all this mud is a giant pain since, like I said, it majorly slows you down. Moving on to the Flower Cup, we have Desert Hills, which is another generic desert course. There's some pokies, as well as the Angry Sun from Mario 3, which drops fireballs, and that's neat, but aside from that, this course is whatever. Delfino Square. This is a cool one. You're driving through this little town loosely inspired by Mario Sunshine, and it's kinda neat going through all of it, especially this part with a boost bridge, easily the high point of the track. Up next is Waluigi Pinball. This is amazing. One of the most popular Mario Kart tracks ever, and it's completely justified because it is so much fun. The whole thing is structured like a giant pinball machine. You blast yourself out of this tube, drive through these railings while avoiding giant pinballs, make your way through these bumpers and flippers. It's such a creative course, and so much fun to drive on. Especially since the visuals are amazing, the music is great, and they even make the item roulette sound like a slot machine. This is easily the best track in the game, and one of the best tracks in the entire series. After that, we have Shroom Ridge, which is fine. Driving on a cliffside road with some cars and trucks. It's fun, though a little underwhelming coming after Waluigi Pinball. The Star Cup, we have DK Pass, which is a fairly generic snowy mountain level. You drive up avoiding snowmen, and then drive down avoiding snowballs. It does the job okay enough, but pretty basic. Now, Tick-Tock Clock, on the other hand, this is a great one. It's a lot like the level from Mario 64. You're driving on clock faces, avoiding moving hands and swinging pendulums, and at the end, there's these two gears that move forward or backward, which is really fun. I played this track dozens of times, and it's still a great time. Mario Circuit is another simple one, but it's good. I definitely think it's better than Double Dash's Mario Circuit. It's still windy, but not as much, and you can hit these Goombas to get some bonus mushrooms, which I like. And we finished off with Airship Fortress, another highlight of the game. It's a lot like the airships from Mario 3. You dodge giant bullet bills, rocky wrenches, fire spitters, and blast out of a cannon into a tower. It's a total blast. You see what I did there? And finally, we have the Special Cup. Wario Stadium is what happens when Nintendo looks at one of their old courses and says, what if we did that again, but good? Because despite the name, it's closer to Waluigi Stadium from Double Dash. You're making all these turns, jumping off ramps, boosting over mud, and avoiding these fireballers. It's a pretty good time. Peach Gardens is a prime example of simple yet effective. You're just driving through the garden of Peach's castle while avoiding the flowers and hedges, as well as chain chomps which serve as guard dogs. It's just so pleasant, and a really nice track to go through. And we continue the new tradition of ending with Bowser Castle, followed by Rainbow Road. Bowser Castle is pretty solid. You got a room with moving floor, tons of thwomps to dodge, going up the tower, a giant spinning tube, and these shifting blocks over lava. That's super challenging, but you need to stay on your toes. Now, Rainbow Road is really good. It's kind of similar to Double Dash with the curvy turns that are designed to be drifted on, so make sure you do that, but there are some fun new additions like a loop-de-loop or a corkscrew. Not my favorite Rainbow Road from the series, but still a really good one. Overall, we get a great selection of courses. Some are a little basic, but the majority are a ton of fun. And I love how much this game pays tribute to the mainline Mario series.
But what if I told you that was only half of the story? Because Mario Kart DS was the very first time where we had 8 cups instead of 4, half of which are brand new courses, while the other half are returning ones from old games.
Okay, Super Circuit didn't bring back every course from Super Mario Kart, but that was different since those were only from one game and bonuses you got from jumping through a bunch of hoops. These are proper cups with their own trophies and unlockables. Much like the new courses, which are referred to as Nitro tracks, you start out with only 2 cups and unlock the other 2 by beating them. Though you only unlock the new cups in specific difficulties, but that's not that big of a deal. Once you complete them all, you unlock more carts and characters. And the tracks are actually quite a bit different from how they were in the original games. There's 4 from the previous games, and the retro cups all follow the same pattern: SNES track, N64 track, GBA track, GameCube track. This is a really cool idea that adds a great amount of new content without feeling like padding, though the downside is that a lot of these tracks aren't actually that good. Because the DS was limited in terms of power, there were only so many tracks from the console games that could realistically be brought back. So the quality of these new versions varies quite a bit. The GBA courses turn out fine, though some of their choices were odd, and the N64 courses are actually pretty good, but the GameCube courses have been heavily nerfed, and the SNES courses were reduced from 5 laps to 3, meaning most of them feel really underwhelming. I'm still glad to see the retro tracks here, but it wasn't until later games where they reached their full potential. Let's get more specific. The Shell Cup features Mario Circuit 1 from Super Mario Kart, Moo Moo Farm from Mario Kart 64, Peach Circuit from Super Circuit, and Luigi Circuit from Double Dash. So this cup is composed entirely of starting courses, except for one, because I guess 64 didn't read the itinerary. Mario Circuit 1 coming back is cute, but since it's only 3 laps instead of 5, it's over in a minute. Moo Moo Farm is about on par with the original version, Peach Circuit is also on par, which is to say nothing too groundbreaking, and Luigi Circuit is worse than before, since while you can see racers going in the other direction, the track is a lot wider, so it's not going to happen as often, especially since you don't have any giant items flying around you. The Banana Cup consists of Donut Plains 1 from Super, Frappe Snowland from 64, Bowser Castle 2 from Super Circuit, and Baby Park from Double Dash. Donut Plains 1 is still pretty bland, Frappe Snowland is a bit better than before since you have more room between snowmen, Bowser Castle 2 does the job fine enough, and Baby Park has been reduced from 7 laps to only 5. The Leaf Cup has Koopa Beach 2 from Super, Choco Mountain from 64, Luigi Circuit from Super Circuit, and Mushroom Bridge from Double Dash. Koopa Beach 2 is once again whatever. Choco Mountain is pretty solid, especially since it's much easier to stay on the track in this version than the original. Luigi Circuit isn't bad, but it's such a boring choice since we already had Peach Circuit come back as well, and Mushroom Bridge is mostly the same as before, but they got rid of the bridge shortcut, which is one of the most iconic parts of the original track. And at last, the Lightning Cup, which contains Choco Island 2 from Super, Banshee Boardwalk from 64, Sky Garden from Super Circuit, and finally, Yoshi Circuit from Double Dash. Choco Island 2 was easily the worst track in the game and one of the worst tracks in Mario Kart history. Driving on this thing is a giant pain. The mud both slows you down and makes everything slippery, which is a problem because it's everywhere and these bumps launch you all over the place. So no matter where you are, steering is the worst. And if that wasn't bad enough, the entire stage looks like crap. Literally. Banshee Boardwalk, oh boy, my least favorite track from 64. I mean, this version is better on account of being able to actually see, but I still think this track is pretty boring. Now thankfully Sky Garden is actually worth having. It was the best course in Super Circuit and it's recreated really well. And Yoshi Circuit is whatever, not as pleasant to look at as in Double Dash, but it does the job okay enough. Like I said, the retro tracks in this game aren't great. There's some solid ones like Choco Mountain and Sky Garden, but the majority are either forgettable, disappointing, or just outright awful. Again, I don't hate that they're here, but I can see why I never played these tracks as a kid. That's mostly it for single player stuff, so now it's multiplayer time. And only one copy of the game is required to get the full experience thanks to DS download play, though everyone else is forced to play as a randomly colored Shy Guy. Not really sure why, but I like Shy Guy, so I don't consider that a negative. Kinda wish he was in the main roster. But yeah, multiplayer in this game is great. The track selection allows for some really cool and hectic matches. While the item balance is nothing mind-blowing, you can have some pretty funny moments, like this part where I ended up inking myself with a blooper since I moved up a slot, which would have pissed me off if it wasn't for the fact that the blooper is useless. Handheld multiplayer is always more of a struggle than console multiplayer, but Mario Kart DS still brings in a really fun time if you have a group of friends to play with. I have a lot of fond memories of playing this with my brother, and I have plenty of fun playing this with friends. Moving on from the Grand Prix, we got most of the staples like time trials and battle mode, which can actually be played in single player this time. Even in multiplayer, you can allow for CPU players and put people on teams, but that's boring, so no one does that. There's two modes, Balloon Battle and Shine Runners, which is different from Shine Thief from the last game. Balloon Battle is a lot like before, only you can keep your balloons in reserve and blow them up by blowing into your DS microphone or holding the select button. The fewer balloons you have out, the better items you get, but if all of them pop before you blow up any more, you still lose, so there's a decent level of strategy here. And after you die, you become a ghost and can pop out extra item boxes to get revenge on whoever killed you. Shine Runners, on the other hand, was easily my favorite as a kid. Shine sprites are scattered across the arena, and you have to grab as many of them as you can. If you get hit, you lose one, and when the timer runs out, whoever has the fewest amount remaining is eliminated. The last player standing wins. It can get pretty hectic, and it's pretty fun. So overall, we have a pretty solid battle mode. Not as good as Double Dash, but still a fun time.
Part of that comes from a great selection of battle stages.
There's Nintendo DS, which is a giant DS in space, much like the GameCube from the last game, a fairly decent one. Twilight House, which is a spooky haunted house with branching doors, that's kinda neat since you can easily get cornered. Palm Shore, which is a beach with a rising tide, that's not that great since it drastically slows you down, breaking up the pace. And Tart Top, which is a giant cake that has a boost in the middle, and hitting these things squirts frosting on your screen, which is fun. I always really like this track. But not as much as the two returning battle maps, Block Fort from 64 and Pipe Plaza from Double Dash. Hell freaking yes. These were the best battle maps in both of those games, so bringing them back here was a brilliant decision. Plus, this was the first Mario Kart game to feature online multiplayer that sadly gone the way of the 2D. But what if you don't have any friends and want another way to satiate your time? Well, that's where Mission Mode comes into play. The first proper single-player experience for a Mario Kart game that they just refuse to do again. You get a bunch of little bite-sized challenges you have to complete under a short time limit. Driving through numbered gates, killing enemies with a specific item, winning a race, collecting coins, driving backwards. There's all kinds of fun challenges in here, and you get a rating based on how fast you do it. This is honestly a really fun little side mode. It's addicting trying to beat your best time on these challenges and get the highest rank possible. And since they don't last very long, it's not hard to try again. I'm really shocked that this didn't become a staple for the Mario Kart series because it can be a really fun time. They're divided into 6 levels with 8 missions apiece, and once you finish them all, you get a boss fight. These are also pretty fun and really unique. Level 1 has Big Bully, whom you need to knock off the platform with mushrooms. Level 2 has Eye Rock, which requires you to hit the eyes with shells. Level 3 has Goom Boss, whom you have to beat in a race while he spits Goombas at you. Level 4 has King Boo, which really stands out. You just need to collect 50 coins, but he'll steal them from you, and then you need to chase him down and ram into him to get them back. Level 5 has Big Babomb. It's supposed to be King Babomb, whom you have to shoot with Babombs. This is the equivalent of killing a person by launching babies at them with a catapult. And level 6 has Chief Chili, which is the same as Big Bully, just like Mario 64 DS. Though if you get at least a star rank on every mission, you unlock the 7th level, which contains the hardest missions in the game. And the boss is Wiggler, whom you have to beat in a race with him getting faster every lap.
Speaking of which, this was one of the first Mario Kart games to give you a ranking at the end of each cup based on your performance, though it alternates between letter grades and stars, and I think it's based on the time it takes to complete each race, not what place you're in. Speaking of which, this is by far the easiest Grand Prix in the series to go through so far.
All of the older Mario Kart games could be super frustrating at times, but here I had next to no issue beating these courses. Aside from 1 or 2 hiccups, I cleared every 50 and 100cc course on my first try, and even 150cc went way smoother than the other games. The Mushroom Cup had a couple minor snags, but I still beat it really quickly. The Flower Cup, I had to try Desert Hills a second time, but after that I beat it with no issues. The Star Cup went great until I choked on Airship Fortress. I have no idea what happened here, but thankfully I beat the whole thing perfectly on my second try. The Special Cup also took 2 tries, but on the second I got first place every time. The Shell Cup I got on my first try, which was technically a draw, but that still counts as a win. The Banana Cup I got screwed over in the Bowser Castle, but after that I won with another tie. I'll take it. The Leaf Cup was on my first try and a win that didn't require a tie. And finally the Lightning Cup, which is another first attempt draw. But we're sadly not done here, as once again beating everything unlocks the Mirror Cup, Cup, which is 150 Grand Prix, but all the tracks are reversed. Okay, why do Mario Kart games keep doing this? Does anyone actually play these? Because they're not fun. I swear the CPUs cheat in this mode, because it can be nearly impossible to catch up to them sometimes, especially if you get unlucky with items. Now, the vast majority of these I cleared on my first try with only a few exceptions. The Mushroom Cup took 2 attempts because I wasn't completely used to the reverse tracks, and the Shell Cup took a couple of tries. But the Special Cup drove me nearly insane, and it's all because of Rainbow Road. Didn't matter how well I did on the other tracks, this one just kept screwing me over. Either because I missed a single turn or got hit with a red shell 10 seconds into the race, which I couldn't do anything about. And then the game gave me nothing but mushrooms, which is not helpful on Rainbow freaking Road. I spent ages on this cup, but eventually I managed to win. Aside from that, the only main issue was the Lightning Cup, where I'm not kidding, I lost by exactly 1 point. You have got to be kidding me. But the second try I won, and we have a new title screen, so yeah, we're down here.
Alright, well, now that we have that settled, I guess all that's left to do is just make my way home. Oh, right, I forgot to actually find a driver, so I haven't been moving, I've just been sitting here this whole time. Mario Kart DS is a really good game. While it has some issues like the retro course is kind of below and there are some parts that can be frustrating, the vast majority of this game is a ton of fun. And it's not just nostalgia talking when I say it's one of my favorites in the series. I mean, between some great new courses, solid controls, a good battle mode, and some really fun missions, this game is just as much fun to play now as it was back then. As long as you're not trying to use it as a valid excuse for breaking into someone's car, because the judge will not approve of you for that.